Mednick was one of the first researchers to fully consider how neuropsychological factors might impact the propensity to commit delinquent acts. He considered the electrodermal response rates of children who were delinquent and compared them to their non-delinquent counterparts. Mednick found that the electrodermal responses in the delinquent youth was slower. More contemporary studies consider similar type theories, such as how the effect of ADHD might affect the way a youth processes their surroundings, and how the condition may affect their responses. While this theory does seem to have some predictive value, it appears to predict minor delinquency better than it predicts the more serious offending. The contemporary theories about neuropsychological factors considers how the child interacts with their parents, peers, and teachers. These three relationships are considered to be, they're what is known as, prosocial factors in a child's life. Research shows that the better the relationship the child has in these three areas, the less likely it will be that they will engage in delinquent behaviors. Part of the idea is that the child who has few prosocial factors in their life is more likely to engage in antisocial behaviors. Understand, too, that prosocial factors also include things like the kinds of activities a youth engages in, as well as how they are doing in school. But relationships with others are a big part of the prosocial factors in a child's life. The most prevalent contemporary research on delinquency and neuropsychology considers adolescent brain development and how it impacts the decision-making of youth. During this semester, we'll watch Frontline's documentary, Inside the Teenage Brain, which, while not considering delinquency specifically, will help us understand why the decision process for youth might be very different than the process that adults go through. So our understanding of adolescent brain development has helped the courts to understand that youth have diminished capacity to understand and process their mistakes. They have diminished capacity to learn from experience, diminished capacity to engage in logical reasoning, control impulses, and understand the reactions of others. Now, that's not to say that children should not be held accountable, but it does need to be factored into the eventual outcome of their court cases, and these issues need to be considered so they can be built into the system of juvenile justice process and also be considered in what kinds of treatment are offered to the youth. This final slide gives you a visual of how the prefrontal cortex, the area that's responsible for understanding future consequences and in part for deferred gratification, how it matures over time. As you can see, and I am sure can imagine, the areas in a 5-year-old are very minimally developed. And that's why if you put a plate of cookies in front of a 5-year-old and tell them that if they don't touch the plate for the next hour, don't eat any of the cookies on it, they would get all the cookies on the plate. But if they eat one before the hour's up, they only get that one cookie. That's why it's rare, if ever, that a 5-year-old can wait out the hour. So we now know that the prefrontal cortex does not fully mature until about the mid-20s. This is all groundbreaking research that's been developed in the past 2 decades and has helped a great deal in understanding why youth do the things they do. So that concludes our exploration into individual causes of delinquency. We've discussed psychological, physiological, biological, and neurobiological theories in this chapter. Our next several chapters will take us into a more sociological, anthropological, and environmental area of study.